Hello, I'm gonna tell you a story about the Dasha'S dad, the father to a teenage girl with a Down syndrome, Russia. We were very young when my wife got pregnant. While our friends were studying, traveling, and goofing around, we were furnishing the nursery. We bought everything way ahead of time. Both my wife and I are thorough people. We like to plan ahead. The midwife called me early in the morning and asked me to come to the hospital. The doctor said, "Your daughter is sick. She has Down syndrome." Then he added quite cheerfully, "Don't feel bad. It's like a defective toy. You just return it back to the store." My wife and I fell prey to the propaganda of doctors and lawyers. You can see it in her face. "Don't you hold her. You might get used to her." Stuff like that. So we signed the child abandonment papers. The lawyer's goodbye words were, "You'll make 10 more kids, and you'll forget this one like one forgets the nightmare." I got rid of all the baby stuff within one evening. I didn't want to have anything left by the time my wife returned. At first I tried to hand the stuff over, but in the end I just put everything in the trash. We told our friends and acquaintances that our child has died. I was determined to go back to normal life as soon as possible. At first we didn't even discuss any of what had happened. But soon enough, my wife became melancholic. She would spend a lot of time in the bed, she'd missed work, she couldn't stand walking past the strollers of babies, it upset her. Suddenly he started saying that she wanted to visit our daughter in an orphanage. But I was strongly against it. God forbid she'd get the idea to take her back. She doesn't have the right to ask me for such sacrifice. I didn't sign up for that. Tending to a disabled child who's never developed into a full-fledged person. I couldn't understand what we did to deserve that. I was very angry. I started coming home late from work, but I agreed to visit Dasha. My wife had a chance to give her name. Very well, let's get it over with. As we were approaching the orphanage, we heard loud crying. My wife somehow felt that it was our daughter, and she was right. Dash's foot had gotten stuck between the bars of the bed, and there was no one to help her. I saw her for the first time. Tiny, sad little girl. Not the monster from the doctor's descriptions. But I still refused to hold her. I knew very well how that could end. My wife and I had a terrible fight, but finally I moved out and filed for divorce. My wife took Dasha home. The girl was one, she could neither sit nor stand, but my wife took the matter into her own hands. She found special lessons and exercises for special children. She started training Dasha, developing her and loving her. I was offended. I felt that my wife chose Dasha over me. But I'm not bastard, I thought. And she's my daughter after all. So I decided to visit them on the weekends. The doctor's prognoses were complete and utter nonsense. Dasha started sitting, walking, talking, and nobody turned away from us. Everyone was very supportive, family and friends. The people walking past us on the street used to take a peek in a stroller and say that our girl is beautiful. She turned out to be a happy and curious child. Down syndrome turned out to be a developmental singularity, but not a disease. And Dasha'S father turned out to be a coward and a scumbag. Today Dasha is 15 and she goes to school. Not long ago, she participated in a photo shoot for the Syndrome of Love calendar. Dasha'S dream is to find a job that has to do with taking care of people. Her mother was kind enough to forgive me and we remarried. But I have a hard time to forgiving myself. We've had another daughter and Dasha adores her. At the moment, my wife and I are leading a support group for other parents who have kids with Down syndrome. Among other things, we share our own story, the very painful experience that ended in such happiness. Every time I tell my story, I feel a little bit better. But I'm still having a hard time to forgive myself. Would you forgive me?